my. So my name is Brian H. Kim. I am a film and television composer and songwriter living in Los Angeles, California. I've been doing it since about 2007 and have worked on a number of things from animated series to feature films and hour-long dramas, really all across the map, and have had a really interesting career so far. And I'm just excited every day to get up and get to do this.
Wow. So I'm curious, what was that first initiative like? Yeah, I want to go into producing for television.
Um, it was a winding path. I went to college to be a doctor. My dad is a doctor, my mom is a nurse, and so I started pre-med and very rapidly was just became really unhappy with it. And I saw my classmates just loving it and just like loving going to chemistry lab and loving their results and getting the results right, and I was getting all the results wrong, and I just didn't understand like where this disconnect was happening. And then I only lasted about a semester, and then I dropped it, and then I just started studying a lot of different things, a little bit of computer science, a lot of music, always a lot of music. I grew up playing piano and singing and being in theater, and so I wound around in college for a while until my senior year, and I was just like, you know what? The music is where it is for me. But even still, graduated with a music degree. I was a music teacher for a couple of years out in Washington, D.C., where I moved after college, and it was awesome. But I just wanted to execute the thing that I was teaching. And so, based on some advice from some professors and just music friends, I applied to the USC film scoring program. Moved out here in 2007 and started going there. It's a 1 year program, and then after that, I just started working as an assistant studio tech for any composer who would let me into their studio, pretty much. And then got a full-time job working for a composer. Did that for about 5 years, and then just started booking my own stuff, working with editors and music editors and music supervisors and beginning to make a name for myself. And yeah, I've been working ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that it's just always not to say my brother's going through the same pathway. Um,
Mm.
Wanted to go into the medical field. Literally, like one semester, he's like, "No, I don't want to do this route."
Mhm.
Um, Now I think he's still going in. He's still in the medical route, but it's more like uh analytics.
Okay.
He's
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
I'm
for
good with
me,
numbers. I'm not good with heart stuff.
no, for me, it was like I wouldn't want me as my doctor. If I knew this is how I was doing in like the earliest chemistry classes, like not even the hard stuff, just like level 1 college chemistry. If I knew that my doctor was doing that, I would choose a different doctor. So if I didn't want to be my own doctor, I should probably do something else.
No, no, that's good. That's good. And honestly, you've created such a huge portfolio of different works, all leading up to the newest
Mhm.
um project that's coming out in December, which is insane to think about that
Right.
it's literally
Yeah,
just next week,
I know.
or technically, I guess this week when I post it.
All
Um,
right.
is it Gentry?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so curious as to how you got into that show.
Yeah, so back in 2022, they meaning the show and Netflix started looking around for a songwriter for it, and so they just went out to agencies. My name had been put into a sort of initial hat because somebody that I worked on a Disney show with was working at Netflix at the time when it was under pre-production, and put my name in a hat as somebody who they thought might be good at the show. And so when I got sent the creative brief, it had all of these things that I felt were speaking directly to me. There were references to K-pop and Japanese horror and East Asian mythology. And I've been doing this for a while, and I've done a lot of creative brief demos, and I see them, I'm like, yeah, I can definitely do that. And I maybe there are somebody else in town who could also do it. So, if one of my friends gets it who can do this sort of similar vibe, great, good for them. But I got the Gentry brief, and I was like, no, 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 no. This one is mine. I'm gonna swing really big, and I'm gonna land this one because this one feels like it was made for me to do. And
Yeah.
so I did nothing for 6 weeks except write a demo for the show. I sort of dropped everything. I took care of my kids. I like cooked meals and stuff like that. I did like the day-to-day
The
things.
basics.
The basics I kept, but yeah, I just like I don't I went. really headfirst into this demo and worked really hard on it. And so when Netflix and Echo Wu, the showrunner, when I heard that they liked it, I was over the moon, you know, and then just so excited to get to do it, like get to write another dozen songs and get to do 13 episodes of this kind of vibe was really exciting. But yeah, it was a very like Hollywood sort of process, like get a creative brief, compete against some other composers, write a song, hope that you do the best one. Yeah, and I can't believe that we're here now, 3 years later,
And
almost. Yeah.
translating human emotions and animated emotions into a song wise to blend, um, is it a little bit of a difficulty to do an animated show as opposed to a real life show?
Well, the tricky thing with Gentry was that I started working on it before anything had gotten really animated. I was
Okay.
given scripts because
Oh,
they wanted me to write songs at the very beginning so that they could animate action sequences in time to the music. It's not a musical in that like nobody's singing the songs that I wrote on screen, unless there's a couple of karaoke songs that I wrote for the show, but that's neither here nor there. There's like the primary songs are for action sequences or dramatic sequences, and so they wanted to have that before animation so that they could time the animation to it. And so I was just writing to words, you know, no visual representation except for a couple of character mock-ups and that sort of thing. And so I would go through the script and they would tell me which pages in the script they thought would need a song. And I would just read the dialogue and be like, okay, I probably shouldn't have any lyrics here. And then there'd be a paragraph of action description. I'd be like, okay, this is the time where I can drop in a pre-chorus and then this big action happens. And like maybe I'll have the hook drop here, you know? And so it was all very theoretical at first. Pretty much on every live action thing that I've worked on, I'm one of the last people to come in on the project. Like
yeah.
editorial is done, pictures pretty much locked. And then I'm coming into this visually almost fully formed project. So for Gentry, I was really like in the dark in a lot of ways, and so I would write these songs, and Echo Wu, the showrunner, always knew what the final product was, what the goal was, and so she would give me notes on what she thought the show would need. I would tweak it, and then once it got to a good point, I didn't think about it for like 9 months because we would send it off to the animators and then they would start doing their thing. And then 9 months later, I'd get it back and see, oh, okay, this timing didn't land exactly how I thought it was going to with the action because what I thought up in here is not what's showing up on the screen. And then I would tweak it again. And then I would send that back to editorial. And then I wouldn't think about it for another few months until we recorded it with a recording artist. And so I didn't know who was going to sing each song while I was writing it in most cases. And so when we got the recording artist who was interested in doing it, there was always a back and forth about what they wanted the song to be for their voice and what the song kind of needed for the show, and finding this middle ground between the ideal characteristics of a song for their particular voice and then what we needed in terms of storytelling. So if the song was a little bit more rap heavy and we ended up hiring somebody who was more of a singer, we would tweak the lyrics and the melody to work more with that, or vice versa, you know. And
Yeah.
so for Gentry, it was this really long, drawn out, very rewarding process of really living with a song for a long time and seeing it evolve as more people would get involved as we got later on to the process. And for me, like that's a really special process that was specifically for Gentry, but also only possible in animation when you're working with this kind of schedule.
Ooh, okay. Because I was always kind of questioning on the process wise because not to say I recently just did an interview with another producer for another animated show, and he talked about how he had the whole screen and you can just edit it, that he was just making the music while watching the screen. So
Mhm.
to know that you were just creating this based off of just the script alone is kind of insane to see through the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I had it was every stage of it. It was a script stage, and then it was an animatic stage, and then it was an animated stage, and then into the recording studio. So it felt like the metaphor I keep using is that like there was a time when I made a baby, and I was the only one who was holding the baby. The baby just lived with me in my studio, and then I introduced the baby to a few more people, and then a few more people hold the baby, and then more and more people hold the baby. And now, for example, with the Cat's Eye song, the main title flame that's for the show, now the whole world has the baby. And so like it's not my baby anymore. And now everybody's just holding it and looking at it and hugging it and giving their opinion on it. And so it's yeah, it's a crazy process to feel that something was just here for a while and then it's like everywhere, you know?
I love that you made like the best segue ever. I'm
Okay.
curious as to how Cat's Eye got into the whole Gentry show.
Yeah, so I wrote a bunch of main titles for the show, and once we figured out which one was going to be the right vibe, we knew we wanted a girl group to do it. We needed that big girl group sound. We wanted to have multiple soloists, and we were in a really interesting spot where we had written a main title in four different languages. It's mostly in English, but there's Mandarin in there, there's Korean in there, and then there's one quick line of Spanish because we felt like that encompassed all the cultures that were being represented in the show. The show takes place in Texas, and so there's a bunch of Tex-Mex influence in the references that are around the town. And then there's Gentry, the character lives in Korea for a little while, and so a lot of her reference points are Korean, and then she's Chinese American, and so we also wanted to include that in there. And so we had this, and we started talking to girl groups, and then Cat's Eye hadn't been formed yet. They were just really beginning to come into, well, they had been formed yet. They had been picked from the Dream Academy, but they hadn't
Yep.
premiered yet. So nobody knew what the songs were going to be, or what the singles were going to sound like, or what the group was going to sound like. But we were so intrigued by the makeup of the group, and that here's a girl group that is from the K-pop world. They're from the K-pop training, which is kind of the sound that we were going for the main title. But within the makeup of the group, they had all of the cultural reference points that we were already looking for. So when we were talking to other artists, there was always a little bit of a square peg and a round hole thing. But like, okay, we can make this work for you. We can tweak these lyrics here and there. But we didn't have to when we started talking to Cat's Eye, and we met the group, and they were so excited. We got to see the documentary before it premiered on Netflix just to get a better idea of where they came from.
Yep.
We got to hear all the songs from their EP before that got released into the world, so we could get to hear what the group was going to sound like. We had a lot of meetings with Hybe and Geffen just to see the best way to deliver the song and give them direction for it. And then that all led up to this really big recording day out in Santa Monica at Interscope Records, where we just spent a whole day recording the song with them. And it was crazy. It was great. They were so professional and they were so talented and just so excited and just, yeah, we couldn't believe that the Kismet had all lined up so that it would we would end up working with them.
That's so cool. Because like I've always kind of been wondering of like how you attain them first before like getting everybody else. Because this is still a brand new group.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
looking at, I mean, like looking at it that way, it's like you guys were like swooped in that quickly. It's
I
insane.
know we really got out of the ground level, and and seeing how much that they've taken off since we worked with them is really exciting. We all, I mean, we in a weird way like feel very proud of them. I mean, we didn't really have anything to do with debut or touch or any of the big singles that they've had off of their EP. We had nothing to do with them, but we were there like right at the very beginning, and so we feel like they're part of the Gentry family, and we're just like cheering them on as they take over the world, you know?
It's amazing. I always, when I first heard them in the background of the trailer, I was like, okay, they had to have some kind of connection. This is Netflix we're talking about. This is their like the easiest route. They're like, ooh, we can get Cat's Eye. But now to hear that, it's more of a, oh, you guys literally spotted them right away.
Yeah, and we talked to a lot of labels. We were very excited that a bunch of different record labels were interested in the song and interested in working with us. We had a lot of really great meetings with some amazing creatives, and it just yeah, this is the one that worked out the best.
Now, I am curious because this is not just there's Cat's Eye isn't the only K-pop group there. You also have there's also in the cast for the show
Mhm.
Woo from The
Yeah,
Rose, which
yeah,
when I saw that name, I was like, no, that can't be who I think it is.
it's
Um,
him. Yeah.
you got him in there. I'm surprised. Are we seeing any kind of references for The Rose in this?
Oh, we wanted to. There is, I believe there's at least one Rose song that's like in the soundtrack of it. But by the time that I had come around onto the show and I was writing songs for the show, he was on tour and like off doing things. And so we tried to make the schedules work, be like, ah, Wu Sung's on the show. Obviously, we should have Wu Sung sing a song. But the schedules didn't line up. But maybe if there's a season two, then maybe we
Yes,
can make that come into fruition. Just manifest it, put it out there for all
of
the Wu Sung
course.
fans. Just like you wanted to sing a song on the show, let's get into season two.
Yeah, because when I saw that, I was like, no, wait, this can't be who I think it is.
No, and that band is so good, and he is so good. He's so charismatic on stage. His voice is amazing, and he does. I think people are going to be really surprised with how well he lent himself to voice acting, and how he just like blended right in with everybody else. I mean, he's up there with Ali Wong and Lucy Liu and Bowen Yang and these really big heavyweights, and so yeah, he does an amazing job, and you really you're not prepared for how much you're going to love his character, I think.
I know. I would like, God, no, looking at the cast, I was like, the first, when I saw Ali Wong on there, I was like, fuck yeah, this is gonna be great. All right.
Yeah, right?
Because she's one of my favorite comedians. And then just see Lucy Liu, which I haven't seen her in ages,
Mhm.
appear on here. I'm like, okay, this, okay. And then
Yeah.
Bowen, obviously, he's just everywhere at this point. So
Yeah,
when it,
Bowen he's having a moment. He's in Wicked. He's got SNL. He's getting Emmy nominations all over the place. Yeah.
I know, I know. It's just insane. So, with all that going on, there's also a soundtrack that's coming out the same day too.
Yes, there is. They are releasing like a double disc. If it came as a CD, it would be in two discs.
Yeah.
But the first disc is going to be the 12 original songs with all the amazing artists. And then the second disc is going to be just the score soundtrack from the show that I also wrote. And I'm pretty sure that this is public knowledge. Maybe it's not. There's going to be a vinyl as well,
Okay.
which is really cool, a 2 LP vinyl. At first, when we were going to make the vinyl, the plan was originally just to have it be the 12 original songs. But Mondo, the company who's making it, were like, no, 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 we want it to be the same thing as the digital release. And so I was really excited about that to also get my score on there. I've seen some early drafts of the artwork, and it's
Ooh.
pretty wild. And so I've worked on projects that have had soundtrack releases and worked on projects that haven't had soundtrack releases for whatever reason or the other. And so to see the support that Netflix put behind this and Titmouse and Mondo in making this soundtrack release be as cool and special as it's turning out to be, from what I've seen so far, it means a lot. It really means so much because, I'm in here working like in my little cave, just making all the music and talking to the artists and recording them and everything. And to know that the other people believed in it too, it really means a lot.
Do you collect your stuff?
Oh,
Like,
I guess.
am I gonna
Yeah,
see the vinyls up on your wall
yeah,
behind you?
yeah. They're here. They're not in view on this camera. They're on a shelf over there. But I feel like, I think we're all just so lucky to be creating stuff that we believe in and that means something to us, I would be remiss if I didn't buy as much swag as I could whenever they come out. I was on a Disney show from 2015 to 2019 called Star versus the Forces of Evil. And when Funko came out with Funko Pops of them, I definitely bought like five of each Funko Pop, just being like, well, what if one of them breaks? And I don't have one anymore. I got to get an extra Marco because if I don't have a Marco, then the thing is like not complete, And so, yeah, I bought a bunch of stuff for Star. I have scripts from when I was an assistant on How I Met Your Mother. I kept those. They just felt really special. And yeah, for the vinyl with Gentry, I know they're going to give me one. I hope they give me one at the
I
very
hope
least,
so.
for on the house. But I'm definitely going to buy a few of those just to make sure that we always have one in like mint condition.
Yeah, because I don't know what it is, but like owning something that you got that you worked on just up
Yeah.
on the wall somewhere, being like, I did that. Just feels so.
No, I can't imagine how Echo Wu, the showrunner, is going to feel after all of this. Because I mean, none of us would be here talking if she hadn't come up with this show in the first place. And
Yeah.
so, And she's been on it longer than anybody. I say that I've been on it for 3 years, but she's been on it for way, way longer. Maybe even since she was coming up with these ideas as a much younger version of herself. And so, yeah, I we had this really big rap party for the show a couple weeks ago. And yeah, everybody was really emotional just because we all believe in it and we all really put our heart into it. So I'm sure for Echo, I hope she's so proud of the work that everybody's done.
I hope so too. I mean, like I said, I hate that I only have seen just the
I
trailer.
know. I know.
It's
We'll talk again when the show comes
yes.
out. Yeah,
Oh, for
just shoot
sure, we
me.
can definitely do that. Because I'll binge watch that.
Yeah.
Because it just looks like so much fun, and as somebody who's God, I don't know, maybe it's because of TikTok. I've gotten fully into the world of K-pop. Um,
Mm.
like beforehand, I think, gosh, my like first introduction was like Shiny and Super Junior. Those were like my like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Those
yeah,
are also my
like
OGs.
girls'
Those that
generation. That was like that
Yeah,
time period.
absolutely. That was right when I was also getting in. That was right after I moved to LA. I moved to K-Town when I first moved to LA and was just like for the first time in my life just surrounded by modern Korean culture. And that was also the time of like peak Girls' Generation, peak Super Junior. I saw Shiny at the Hollywood Bowl, which was crazy. And yeah, when Girls' Generation came out with the new album a couple of years ago, I was like the first one to download it.
Yeah.
I don't keep up on like the news. I didn't know it was coming. And so when it dropped and I saw it in my Apple Music feed, I was like, "Oh yeah, let's take a look at that." And it was great. It was so good. And so yeah, I had to listen to had to. I for the job for Gentry, I wanted to make sure that I knew every K-pop release that was coming out. And so I was listening to like basically every new K-pop song every day, like for work. I
Yes.
would just
That's
track it
cool.
down and just make sure that I knew what every label was doing, what every group was sounded like. Because, working on these songs, I was starting working on them, like I said, a couple of years ago, but I knew the show wasn't going to come out for a couple of years. And so I wanted to make sure that I knew what was current and what was happening in the scene so that if I ever had to go in and like reopen and retweak a song just to make sure that it wasn't feeling dated in any way, that I would know what I was referencing, because that's what ultimately we wanted the soundtrack to feel just like a pop album. We wanted
Yeah.
those songs to feel like a sort of cohesive pop album with just a whole lot of guest vocalists, like the way that, Mark Ronson or David Guetta will have just like, they pop album and then, every song has a different singer. Like that's the vibe that we wanted it to be in this kind of modern K-pop rapping. And hopefully we did it. Hopefully we succeeded.
Now you mentioned it, that there is guest artists on this. Is there any ones that you can, besides obviously Cat's Eye, any ones that you're willing to share at the moment?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was really cool. Billboard, on the day of the trailer release actually had this article where they listed all the songs and all of the artists, and so that was very cool to see that existing on some place like Billboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me see if I can go through all of them here. I'm gonna try to go through them in track order. So there's Cat's Eye, Jesse, who is a Korean hip hop rapper singer who is incredible and was like this sort of pie in the sky goal. Like when we started working on the show, I was like, we'll ask Jessie. Maybe she'll say yes. Maybe she'll completely ignore us. But she was super into it, blew us all away. Everybody blew us away. There is a Filipino American rapper named Shugs, Yeji, who is a Korean American DJ, producer, singer out in New York. And Yeji, Jonah Wolf, Bear. This is not in track order. I've left it. Oh, Eej, who is Jay Park. He used to be a member of Day Six, and now he's gone solo. He has
Yeah.
a
Okay.
really crucial, huge tent pole of a song in the middle of the season. Um, Kenton Chen, who is a singer I've known for a long time. He works here in Los Angeles. He's also done a bunch of stuff with Postmodern Jukebox. He raps in Mandarin on it. A local rapper, Korean rapper named Notice Young, who I met when demoing for the show. He helped me with my demo, and so to get him on the actual final version of the show was really, really gratifying for me. Alice Long Yu Gao is a hyperpop Chinese artist who is wild and did some amazing vocal edits for it for the show. Twee, who sings one of like the R&B kind of vibe songs on the soundtrack. Rex Dizzy, who a lot of people know as one of the characters on Beef. He is one of Stephen Yun's friends. He has the glasses, one of the thief friends on Beef.
Oh,
He is also a rapper, and sings a wild cover of Remember the Alamo. That's a Korean trap cover of Johnny Cash's Remember the Alamo, which is a very specific sentence to say out loud,
yes,
but
it
it's
is.
very cool. And then one of my really one of the tracks that I was most excited about is the final track on the album, which is called Silhouette. It's a ballad. It's sung by a Japanese American artist named Ray Brown, who I had always loved for years. I love his voice. I love his music, and that was an interesting situation where we had other schedules that made it seem he wasn't going to be on the soundtrack, that we were going to use a different artist, and then that artist actually dropped out, and then we hadn't reached out to Ray Brown yet, and we didn't think he was going to say yes just because we loved him so much, and we just sort of held him up in like such high regard. And to our delight, he heard the song and he heard about the show, and he, like everybody else, just believed in what he heard and saw. And I just sent him the song and I was just like, do your Ray Brown thing on it. And I'll be blessed with whatever you give back. And I remember I was on a dog walk when he started sending me back his takes. And I had just put my AirPods in while I was on a walk with my dog on this, 72 and sunny summer day out here in Los Angeles. And just I heard his takes in my ears on this walk. And it was another one of those things where like we're two people on this in this world who know what this sounds like now, and just feeling really, really lucky to be able to work with an artist like him who was going to give me such rich material back, and to see the song come to fruition like that. And I love all the tracks on the album. I have a sort of special place in my heart for that final one. Also because as you watch the show, I use the melody from the song throughout the whole season as sort of like a primary theme in the score, but you don't hear Ray's voice until the final episode of the season. And so for me, getting to put that song in the season finale was a really big emotional thing for me after having worked on it for so long. And I hope that the listeners will also hear that in the score and that melody will stick for them. And then when they get to the season finale, they'll hear the big full version of it. And I hope it affects them too.
So it's kind of giving off like that haunting vibe that as you're watching, you're just like, okay. Oh, and
Yeah.
then that last episode just fully, ooh, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, for me, that was what I wanted to do on this show as the composer and as the songwriter. I wanted to be able to play with both the score and the songs in that way, to treat them so that they can't live without each other, like the Silhouette song at the end of the season wouldn't have the same impact if it weren't for the score, and the score wouldn't have the same impact if it weren't for the song at the end. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it was really, really gratifying and rewarding to get to put that together.
So with that being said, when it comes to those individual songs with the scores, those songs come first, or was it more of like a marriage between the two that kind of came in as you were working on the original score?
I wrote almost all the songs first,
Oh,
because I was
okay.
hired as a songwriter first, and then because that was all in pre-production specifically, and then when came time to figure out who the composer was, I sort of naturally kind of slid into that role, especially because I told them my overall vision of what I thought the show could be, and everybody believed in it. And so, yeah, when I was writing the songs, I was very conscious of what songs were going to be reused and what songs had themes that I would need to make sure could work in the score. So that's one. The season finale song is certainly one that was I knew that was going to come at the season finale, and so I wanted to lead up to it. There are a couple of songs that are associated with romantic pairings in the show. So Kit is Woo-sung's character, and Gentry have a sort of have a romantic connection, and Gentry also has another connection with a character named Michael, who you've seen them all in the trailer, and so I wanted each of those pairings to have a very specific vibe. So there's a specific song that Yeji sings that is associated with the Gentry Michael pairing, and then the Kit connection has a couple of different songs because it goes through a couple of different evolutions. There's a score piece sung by a singer named Kelsey Hahn, who is also on the Arcane soundtrack, as these kind of lead classical soprano solos that you hear on the Arcane soundtrack. So she also
Yeah.
sang for us. I've known her for years as well. And so she sings one iteration of the Kit Gentry theme, and then Jonah Wolf, who I mentioned earlier, sings sort of a song that is representative of those relationships. But those melodies I also start using in different parts of the score whenever they're having a moment romantically, but I don't want to use the full song. I'll just use the melody and I'll put it in a piano or strings or whatever instrument is kind of carrying the score at that time. So everything is talking to one another. Score is talking to the song, songs talking to the score. It's all a big cohesive thing.
And that cohesive thing is now a living baby at this point,
Oh, it's
ready
not
to be
mine.
shown.
Other people know what they're gonna know what it's gonna sound like, and I can't. It's gonna be weird to not be able to work on it anymore. I had to do work on it like last week because we had to crack open one of the song mixes for a last minute tweak, and so it's just like coming right down to the wire. And it's like when this show is out, I don't really know what it's gonna feel like to not be able to work on it anymore. I'm not gonna wake up in the middle of the night with some song tweak that I just want to cram in there at the last second.
I would say when is the official deadline?
I I think. What December 5th is when the show comes out, so I guess that's like the official deadline of when it's out in the world. I can't do anything at that point.
Because I was like, all right, well, this isn't like a traditional media
No.
media service so was it Star versus the oh my gosh, why am I spacing? The
Forces of
evil
Evil. Yeah,
forces, where that one's more of like there's a set deadline on there and
yeah. It was
it
on
has to
linear
go.
television. Yeah.
Yeah. So with
Yeah,
this,
and
it's more of
so
like you have that gateway of like I could push it to the very last minute.
yeah, yeah, and we were doing that. We were cracking open mixes for the show, to replace song lyrics, to replace vocal takes, that sort of thing. But with Star, I mean, that was linear TV. We had a weekly deadline that we had to hit because the show was going to air the following week, and so we just, for better or for worse, like it really put a fire under our butt for Star. It's just like we had to be done, and it had to be right by a certain day. And with Gentry, it was a much more like we could look at all 13 episodes of the first season all at once and really make sure that everything was cohesive and talking to one another. And so it was just like a very different process for it. And it's my second Netflix show. I had a YA drama the previous year called My Life with the Walter Boys,
Yeah.
that also had a similar process. It was a 10 episode season, but we could kind of look at the whole thing all at one time because that's just what the model is.
Yeah, I was gonna mention about that one because you was that during the same time frame as Gentry?
Yeah, it's funny. I was on Gentry for so long that I started and finished a whole season of another show while I was working on Gentry. But yeah, I actually got hired on Gentry first, and then I got hired on Walter Boys a little bit later. But yeah, I was working on them at the same time.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I was like, because you said 3 years, and I'm like, okay, the Walter Boys was in between that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also, I did a movie with Focus Features called Spoiler Alert. Also within the time frame of Gentry, I finished another documentary that's going to be coming out next year, probably. Also within the time frame of Gentry. And so, yeah, it's been this really, really big part of my life for a while.
So, with that being said, this is um with all of that happening within the 3 years, plus kids, how do you manage a day?
It's
I know we
uh,
were talking earlier where like we were like that you're precise on exact time
yeah,
frame,
I was telling you,
deadline.
but, like, if it's not on the calendar, I will miss it, and or it doesn't exist. I have to know at the beginning of each day. I got to be at school by this hour because there's an assembly that my kid is going to be reading at. So I want to be there by 8:15. I will leave there at 8:45. I'm going to come home 9 o'clock. Maybe I have a meeting at 11 o'clock. So I need to work on X amount of minutes of music between 9 and 11 o'clock to hit my daily deadline. After my meeting at 11, I'm going to have lunch. After my lunch, I'm going to probably head back into the studio. Maybe I have a phone call at 2 on a different project and I have to work in my writing before the 2 o'clock call and the writing after the 2 o'clock call. You cannot see, but buried in the corner over here is like a little video game system setup that's hooked up to everything here. So that if I'm burning out and I need 15 minutes where I just need to recharge, I can just push pause on the work. I can go and like fire up the Nintendo for 15 and 20 minutes. I can recharge for 20 minutes. I can come back. If I want to exercise that day, I have to work in like the 30 to 45 minutes where I'm going to work out that day. It's wild, and I think that one of the things that I'm most grateful for technology for is the ability to like manage a calendar and then have alerts sent to my wrist so I know
Yeah.
exactly where I need to be and when I need to be there and what I need to be doing. Because I think, with entertainment industry being what it is and the fast pace of it and with email and Dropbox and the ability to deliver things on a dime and being a parent and living in Los Angeles, just like all of that, it's a juggle. I wish I'd had seminars on that when I was like starting out here in town, just being like, here is how you have a career in entertainment, but also manage a family life. It's my wife is also in entertainment. She's a writer, and so we're constantly talking about this and trying to make it work.
I know they should definitely like include that into just basic high school of just how to manage a calendar.
I know, I know, I know. When I was a teacher, I like didn't have any sort of written calendar. I just tried to remember all of it, and like that is the epitome of like 22-year-old hubris of just thinking you can hold an entire calendar in your brain for an infinite amount of time. That would not fly today.
I know I got my like paper calendar right here, and then I got my
Mhm.
calendar on my wrist, and just
Yep.
trying my hardest to get everything on time. And
Yeah, we have a
um,
chalkboard calendar in the kitchen just so the kids can see everything because they don't have iCals, so they just need to be able to
yeah.
see something. So we have that. Keep it smooth.
So with all that, the show's out on the 5th. I'm excited. It's just somebody who's just into just Korean music and in general. I'm really curious to see how everything's going to play out. I love the cast already, so this is dead set. I'm going to be fine on that half.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious to know, like as last note wise, if you were to describe the show in like 5 words or less, what would it be?
Echo, the showrunner, had these sort of three key words that she always wanted us to keep in mind. So I'm going to do you better. I'm going to do it in three instead of
Shit.
five.
Love that.
Because it was established that this was sort of like our guiding principles is that horror, humor, heart were always the three things that we had to keep in mind whenever we were creating something for the show. The show can be genuinely scary. I showed the trailer to my 8-year-old son. He was like, nope, 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 nope. It was just like a little bit too much for him. He had to immediately go and brush his teeth because it was time to brush his teeth and he didn't want to be in the bathroom alone. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to show him the show for a little while. That's cool. Echo herself got scared at her own show during one of the mixes because she hadn't seen it with all the sound design and all the music and everything. And there's a jump scare in one of the episodes where she was just like, I don't want to look at that. That's too much. Um, Given that I do think kids can watch it, I think teens will get a kick out of it too. But yeah, so for horror, definitely humor. There's amazing comedic talent involved with the show. You get Bowen Yang, you got Ali Wong, obviously, as these like comedic anchors for all of the jokes that are going to be in the show. Bowen has a lot of very funny moments as a very amusing little Chinese demon character who has aspirations to be something different than what he is, and so the humor is definitely covered there. And even in the horror sequences, some of the horror villains are kind of funny in what they're doing. So there's also that. And then Heart, in that Gentry ultimately is in search of her family. She wants to belong. She had to leave her hometown when she was a young child because she caused a huge fire in the town because she couldn't control her powers. So her family sent her away to Korea to live with an aunt. And now that she's a teenager, she's coming back home because her grandmother wants her to come home. And then when she comes back into Texas, her powers start to reignite again, sort of against her will, just because of tensions that she has in her own hometown. Her parents have passed away, and so she's always looking for parental figures in her life. And then with her friends and her family, she never really feels like she belongs anywhere. And so she's always looking for that sense of belonging. And that really drives a lot of the emotional arcs of the show. And so I think a lot of audiences are going to connect with universal themes like that. So that's where the heart comes in. So horror, humor, heart.
I love that. Ooh, can't. I was gonna say, I'm like, I don't think you can top that.
Yeah, I mean, Echo knew what she was doing. She knew the story she wanted to tell, and props to her. She really came up with a good one.
Well, I cannot wait for everybody to see this and to be able to hear it and own a physical copy of the
Mhm.
soundtrack.
Same.
Um, I'd say, what is your next big project?
I'm on
That's
season.
not NDA wise.
All right. I'm on season 2 of Walter Boys now. I just had a meeting for one of the episodes this morning. It's looking great. I think fans of the first season will be very excited about the second once they start seeing it. And then I finished a documentary earlier this year that should be coming out next year of similar subject matter. It's also about the K-pop industry, and so that should be coming out next year. I am doing another documentary project with Hulu that I'm not sure when that's coming out yet. A lot of documentary work because of the writer strikes, documentaries kept going, and so I started a lot of this stuff
Yeah.
when the writer strikes were happening. Yeah, and then Gentry, and then who knows? It's always changing every week, and yeah, I have some meetings on some other things so far that I probably can't talk about yet, but we'll see. We'll see where they go.